Here's what people don't understand exactly about the Doge and the way the Doge process is working. And so I don't know if I'm breaking news here or not, but the way the Doge process, I've been told, is going to work is, yes, there will be the overall setup with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and a few others that are, and potentially, I think, a liaison who sits in the White House on a daily basis, but also that each of the department heads, each of the agency heads and the cabinet members will have their own Doge office within their departments. So that means there's going to be a DNI Doge. There's going to be a Pentagon Doge. There's going to be a Doge office in basically all of these various agencies. And so that's something where if you combine what Elon Musk and Vivek have said, and predominantly what they've been talking about is bureaucracy, but when you add that quotient to the intelligence communities and the fact that, oh, we have these 18 intelligence agencies, they're so important, we need all 18 of them, and suddenly you start thinking, do we really need all 18? It just fills me with absolute glee, Darren. It really does.
Indeed. Well, I have a recommendation for the DNI
Let's
Doge
go.
and for Tulsi Gabbard. It's something to think about very seriously. Now, as the audience may or may not know, the censorship industry domestically is in retreat. And one of the latest examples of this is the expected discontinuation of the Global Engagement Center, which was sort of the nerve center of censorship operations under the guise of fighting disinformation at the State Department. That's on the chopping block. It's probably going to expire. Now, what few people do know is that there was a similar equivalent agency in terms of hierarchy recently set up under the auspices of the DNI. So that would be in Tulsi's purview, called the Foreign Malign Influence Center. And to give you a sense of who runs this now, her name is Jessica Brandt. We have a big piece coming out on her. And basically, Brookings Institution alum, every single report that she's done basically has been some permutation of Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk, and Dan Bongino are amplifying Russian disinformation narratives. Pretty much 95% of her reporting has been some version of that topic, singling out those three, obviously very influential pro-Trump voices. The funny thing about her career, and I think it really does recapitulate what a joke this censorship industry is at large, is you go and you look at her history, everything she's doing, and by the way, this is a funny thing. She doesn't brand herself as a disinformation expert because that term, I think, is already out of favor. She brands herself, like certain people that we know of, as an AI expert, which is hilarious because all of her pieces are about attacking Tucker, Bongino, Charlie Kirk over amplifying Russian disinformation, which is amazing. But when you go back into her career, all of this stops around 2019, before which every single thing she did was to criticize President Trump for the travel ban. So she's an obsessive in terms of travel ban, obsessive in terms of massive migration, who overnight seemingly becomes an AI expert, which means in effect censoring people like Tucker Carlson under the guise of Russian disinformation. That's the kind of person who runs the censorship office within the DNI.
I just pulled up Jessica Brandt. I went to the latest article that she had written on securing democracy, a strategy for U.S. diplomacy in the age of disinformation, and then which was like her, her basic thing. The very next one, how Kremlin narratives about Ukraine spread on U.S. political podcasts. And I looked up the names Jack Posobiec and Darren Beattie. And guess what? We're all over this thing. And the very first two things she talks about and specifically cites Human Events Daily were, number one, the biolabs in Ukraine. And she pointed out, by the way, that I played the clip of Victoria Nuland talking about the biochemical research facilities that Ukraine has. That's Victoria Nuland admitting it, by the way. And the second one was, of course, the explosion of Nord Stream 2, which is just so, it's a Kremlin narrative. It's a Kremlin narrative that Nord Stream 2 would, that anyone would have pushed this out. It's amazing. This is amazing.
So there's going to be a very comprehensive report coming on Revolver.news about all of her reporting. So just a little teaser there, but absolutely yes. One of her reports was about Nord Stream 2. And here's the amazing thing. Just when you get into the details, it's almost kind of, we've seen this movie before. It's the same shtick, but it's so dumb that sometimes it's worth repeating. Because she actually said, the only other time I heard this was in a different context that I'm sure you're aware of. I won't say what it is, but you're aware of someone actually saying that Russia blew up Nord Stream 2. And Jessica Brandt's position was anything that did not affirm that hypothesis was ipso facto Russian disinformation. So anyone who didn't maintain the exceedingly implausible to the point of absurd notion that Russia blew up its own critical piece of infrastructure, anyone who didn't maintain that utterly indefensible and ridiculous line, which now, by the way, all of the mainstream media itself has abandoned, up to and including the New York Times, anyone who didn't maintain that was engaging in Russian disinformation, going from Tucker Carlson to Bongino to Charlie Kirk, and now
even the official
presumably.
narrative. Even the official narrative has gotten back to the point that, okay, it probably, they'll say Ukraine or some Ukrainian operatives or some unit
Ukrainians
operating out of Poland. By the way, I just have to read this quote because it's so perfect. I guess this is me in 2023, I guess just right after it happened. And relatedly, several podcasters said that official denials made them more likely to believe the alternative theories. Quote, never believe anything until it's been officially denied, argued Posobiec on Human Events Daily. Based. Absolutely based. I completely agree with that guy, and I think everyone should listen to that podcast every day.
Absolutely. A couple other things about her, because again, we've seen versions of her. She's created in the same lab as the Brandy Zadrozny type. She's probably not as mean and cold as Zadrozny, but just as ridiculous. But the thing that I thought was so amazing about her career, other than branding herself as an AI expert, maybe she should go to MIT and stand in front of a blackboard if she's going to call herself an AI expert, because that's what she brands herself as. But if you date back her work, literally 95% of it is this dumb, low IQ censorship Russia stuff. And then come 2019, 2018, literally everything is about how Trump's evil because of this travel ban. So it just goes to show you what a fake industry this actually is, which brings up the very important question you raised before the break, which is there are all of these institutions, the Global Engagement Center, the Foreign Malign Influence Center. There's a lot of them spread throughout the bureaucracies, plus the NGOs and all this. So what do we do with it? Do we want to simply eliminate it as we're eliminating the GEC? Or would it be a better approach to commandeer, to repurpose, to reimagine, to reshape this infrastructure to our own will and toward a free speech agenda? I happen to think that that is the correct approach. I somewhat lament the expiration of the GEC because while it is much better than what it has been in its previous pernicious form, imagine if the GEC were commandeered by somebody who thinks along our lines, who repurposes it for a free speech orientation. That could be very powerful, and I think it's something to take very seriously when viewing this kind of censorship architecture generally, that this can and probably should be repurposed if somebody with the appropriate energy and insight and knowledge and capability could be put at the helm of these respective institutions.
Well, I think that's exactly right, because you've got a situation now where you can actually take that and spin it back on itself. Plus, by the way, and this is where Ben's came in, because of the nature of these organizations, like CISA, they operate in this public-private space. So the first thing you've
Right.
got to do, of course, is pull the funding from the public to the private. So get rid of any of that. Then, and we called it. We were talking about severing the umbilical cord between the federal government and academia. By the way, something I support completely across the board. But also, we need to find out just how closely were these organizations operating with elements of the federal government. We need to also look at the receipts of, okay, so they were listening to our podcast and they made some quotes and some reports. Fine, not that big of a deal. But then the question is, did the federal government then go and take that report and send it to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or any other, Google, YouTube, and others, and say, hey, these are Kremlin narratives and we need to be de-ranking them. Here's a private report that was written, and you can see where this all goes forward. This is how the censorship industry actually works.